We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. As you can tell, I'm back in my home state of Minnesota, sitting in my living room, getting ready to do the Rational Boomer podcast. Last couple of podcasts have been different, but similar. We had Old Soul on two podcasts. I'll tell you what the deal was. Um, I talked to Old Soul and said, would you come on and be on the podcast like you do every week? And she said, cool. But I knew that I was going to be leaving Georgia where I was, and I was going to be either going to Daytona Beach or to St. Augustine. And I didn't know if I was going to be in a position to record there, and I didn't want to not have a podcast available. So I said, Old Soul, whenever we talk, it goes almost 2 hours anyway, whether it be recording and afterwards. Would you be opposed to doing the 2 hours and making it two shows? And she, of course, said that's fine. And we obviously found plenty to talk about, and that's what we did. So yesterday's podcast was a little behind the times because we recorded it earlier. But I want to thank Old Soul for coming on. I knew that even if we didn't know all the facts at the time we recorded it, as to opposed to the news going on, that it was going to be good because, well, it's fucking Old Soul. So I appreciate her coming on, and she'll be joining us again next week, probably just for one show. I'll be in town all week and henceforth until we decide to take off again. So thanks to Old Soul for showing up on the podcast and doing a great job, as she always does. But as I said, I was in Georgia for a time, which I commonly am. We spent the night in Daytona, and then from Daytona this morning, or yesterday morning, we drove to Orlando, got on a plane, and got the fuck back home. And that's where we are. So I appreciate your patience with me while I'm not on top of it as much as I can. Like all day yesterday, I was either on a plane or sitting in an airport. I couldn't do TikToks or anything like that. So I had to wait to do any TikToks because there was a lot of stuff going on until I got back about 3:30 my time. So I had a little catching up to do by the time I got home, but we did that. Now we're back on track and ready to go. And we do have a lot of shit to talk about. There are some things happening that you no doubt know about. We'll go a little deeper into them. I have some emails. Now, somebody sent me a note. Hey, I love your show, but too many fucking emails. What? What? Maybe he's talking about the show where I did all the emails. I don't know. I personally like the show with the emails, and I know a lot of you do. But if you don't, doesn't matter. It's my show. I'm going to do what I do whenever I have to do it. So you're going to have to live with it. But I appreciate the input. I don't hate you for it. I get it. But I think the emails are some of the most valuable things we have on the show. So they stay. If you write me an email, I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure all of them are read. Got a little different situation this time. I've actually got mail, snail mail, as it were. I got this sent to my post office box, and a note came and a little present that I think you'll want to see. This was sent January 31st. Hello, Mike. Wait a minute. This is January 31st, 2023. I know it's been a while since I checked my post office box, but I think it's just a typo. I think he meant 2024. Anyway, he says, hello, Mike. I'm a Gen Xer born in 1970. That would make you 10 years younger than I. And when I grew up, action figures were a big thing for kids. I had many in my childhood, mostly Star Wars, but they were all but a memory. Recently, I saw an ad for one of the best action figures, and it was one that I had to pick up and send to you. Even if you've never played with action figures as a kid, I'm sure this one you will enjoy as simply a conversation piece. I picked myself up one as well, and it remains in its box, on my desk. Love the podcast and have listened to you every day for the past year and a half. I first found you on TikTok. Keep up the great work on cutting through the BS, researching to find the facts, and keeping us all informed. Hope you enjoy your action figure. Best regards, Mike T. I'll be honest with you, Mike, back in my day in the 60s, there weren't a lot of action figures except for G.I. Joe. And then, of course, later on, G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. I'm certain I had a G.I. Joe, but I didn't have a lot of action figures. That said, I have two sons that are millennials. We had action figures coming out of our fucking ears everywhere, piles and piles of them. So I'm very familiar with action figures. Anyway, Mike T found this action figure and felt compelled to buy it and send it to me. And I think you'll know why when you see it. See if I can do this. The light's kind of messing with it. It says Trump, and he's in a box in a cage. It shows him just above 6 feet, like 6'2". I'm not sure if that's accurate, or I don't know that that's to scale, but a real life action figure of dipshit, dirty diaper Donnie Trump in prison. I like this. Now, I'm not going to take it out and play with it because no doubt in 50 years, when I'm long dead, my kids will be able to sell it for a fortune. So it's going to stay in the box. But Mike T, thank you very much for the present. I know you've got one too. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff that comes out after the demise of Donald Trump. And over the past few days, it looks like we're getting closer, a lot closer. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Got some emails. First one says, "Hi, Boomer. I'm a Canadian amateur observer of U.S. politics. I have been listening to your podcast a little over a year now. Great show, I must say. Thank you very much. From my point of view, one thing strikes me. The Democrat strategy seems to rely mostly on facts and the 91 charges against the Orange Clown, which is what normal people tend to rely on. But since there is nothing normal about the way that Trump makes politics and his followers, Democrats should fight him on the same court or hockey rink, if you prefer. In a pure political strategy sense, I haven't seen any real attempts by the Democrats to put political chaos into the MAGA team. We all know what drives most of them is power and will do anything, grifting, lying, wrongfully accusing, and so forth, which is all wrong from a judicial point of view. But politically, Democrats need to attack and come up with out-of-the-box thinking strategy. Since the MAGA base is willing to accept any lies that their God spreads around, why don't the Democrats try to spread the idea that Ivanka or even Don Jr. will make a better candidate than their father? Since Donald doesn't trust anyone and sees potential enemies in everybody, I think it will bring chaos in their ranks. First-time writer. P.S. Sorry for the bad English. My first language is French. Panzer, Quebec City. Well, Panzer, I think you did a fine job. I don't think you had too many mistakes in that particular email. And I know what you're saying. Part of that is something we try to do here. It's always been, since Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. And I question that sometimes. I realize that sometimes you have to get in the mud with them and fight on their terms and then kick their ass there. That's the only thing they can understand. I think we're seeing more out of it. The Democrats, I don't think we'll see Democrats just flat out lie. But one of the things that's happening as of late is that they are exposing the lies of the Democrats. And it's hard for them to refute it. I'll give you a good example. We know that James Comer and Jim Jordan have been having these hearings trying to connect Hunter Biden and Joe Biden with some underhanded business, and they wanted to try to impeach Joe Biden on that basis. They never showed any evidence. They never had anything really going for them, and every time they had these hearings, they embarrassed themselves. Well, yesterday, something came out. There's a guy by the name of Alexander Smirnoff. Now, Alexander Smirnoff was James Comer and Jim Jordan's star witness, saying that there was some untoward things between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and Joe's $5 million bribe, all that same bullshit that we were talking about. But it turns out this Alexander Smirnoff was just indicted by the special counsel that they put in place for lying in those hearings. I mean, these motherfuckers can't win for losing. Their star witness gets indicted for being a perjurer, for lying to Congress. Wow. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if the press takes that to James Comer and Jim Jordan and expects them to answer that. You said all this happened. You said you were sure something happened. Your star witness now gets indicted because he's a big fucking fat liar. Tell us what you think. Now, you'll see a lot of spinning and diverting and distracting on that one. But in realistic terms, I think that's the best thing we can do. Keep exposing, keep embarrassing. I don't think we want to try to infiltrate their narrative with lies. I don't say don't fight back. We're going to fight back. We're going to get tough. We're going to get strong. And everybody's doing that more and more. But we don't have to lie to embarrass them or create the chaos. The chaos is already beginning, like with that case I just talked about, or Donald Trump's trial date set. We'll talk more about that. All this is going to create the chaos and the concern and the flailing that we need to do. We don't need to lie about it. We don't need to make inferences that will ultimately embarrass us. In that regard, we should go the high road, but let's not be afraid of kicking some ass at the same time. All right, thank you, Panzer. I don't know what kind of name that is. Maybe it's his last name. I assume it's a male. But thank you very much from Quebec City. We love hearing from our Canadian neighbors. All right, the next one. Hi there, Boomer. Jack T from New Hampshire here. Just wanted to drop you a note that I've been listening to your podcast for about 5 months now and thoroughly enjoying it. Thank you very much. We'll write again when I have more time, but wanted to at least say hi for now. Jack T. P.S. Giving Old Soul a regular spot on your platform is good for all of us. She's an amazing person. Thank you very much. And I agree. She is an earthbound angel. She'd almost have to be to do the things she does. And she's so calm and collected. And she's very thoughtful about the things she says and believes. And we have the good fortune here on the Rational Boomer podcast to have her on the show. Exclusively she's on this show, not because I locked her down on some big contract. It's because she's not on social media elsewhere other than comments and answering things in the comment sections. But if you want to hear Old Soul, here she is. I may talk to her, try to get her to do some other things because I think that she has a lot to say. And she doesn't always need some big old white goon like me interrupting her all the time. I think there's a lot that she can say, and we'll see how she progresses. I think she was reticent about coming on the show in the first place, but you folks and myself, we convinced her to come on. And like she said, as she comes on and gets the positive reinforcement, she gains some confidence. And she has the right to have all the confidence in the world. She's a very bright, very decent woman, and we enjoy having her on the show. All right, next up. Hi, Boomer. I heard you talking to Old Soul last night. You were complaining about the special investigator that was assigned to investigate Joe Biden. It is apparently the custom to assign a prosecutor from the opposite party. When Robert Mueller investigated Trump, it was the first time that a Republican investigated a Republican. Her went way over the top, should never have gone beyond the facts, and is not qualified to make any judgment on Biden's mental condition. I hope you've seen the press conference where Joe Biden reacted to the report. You're so right, he is pissed. You might be right that Garland will be replaced, but I suspect there'll be some sort of response beyond the presser to that investigator over the report. Here's something I found interesting. I read yesterday that before that report was released, the White House saw it and they complained about it, no doubt to Merrick Garland. But Merrick Garland still released it. I find that interesting. Why would you do that and piss off your boss when what was written was really out of line? Did Merrick Garland not know it was out of line? Was he too chicken to hold it back or go to the person, the special counsel he hired, and say, "What the fuck is this?" I don't know what the deal is. I'm not sure what the deal is, but something's wrong there. Now, the emailer goes on to say, I think the AG needs to be more aggressive type, will be much more proactive. Thank you, Grandma Patty. I couldn't agree more. Now, I had somebody, I think it was Mike from New York or John from New York. You remember that email that John sent me, and I took a exception to some of the things he wrote. And I told him, I said, listen, man, you have a lot of opinions here, and I'm happy to listen to them. And it's okay if you don't believe the things I say. But instead of writing these long letters, why don't you just come on the show and we'll talk it out? And he was ready to do that. In fact, I thought we were going to set this up. And then he came back to me and said, "Well, I talked to some people at my place of business, my workplace, and they said there's some rules or something about dealing with social media, and they didn't think it was a good idea that he would come on the show." I respect that. I'm not going to give you shit about that. I don't want anybody to get in any kind of trouble about anything that goes on in this podcast. If you come on and you're perfectly normal, but I go off the fucking deep end, you could get in trouble for that. So I want everybody to be careful with that. And John, as much as I would like to talk to you and take exception with the things you said, I get it. It's no problem. I don't blame you for not wanting to come on the show. Now, the show didn't have to be contentious. You had some differing attitudes about what I do, and that's fine. A lot of people do. A lot of people do. It doesn't really bug me. I'm not sensitive enough to be hurt when somebody says I'm doing something wrong. I know I'm doing it right because I'm doing it for me. Okay. I think the things I've talked about have been proven to be right enough to know that at least I have some credibility. But over and above that, this is, here's an overused term. This is my truth. I'm spitting my truth. I'm good if people think I'm wrong. I'm fine with that. It doesn't make a difference. So, John, I appreciate you making the attempt to come on. Keep writing the emails, and we'll go from there. And Grandma Patty, I think you're absolutely right. There's something weird going on with AG, um, with AG Garland. And I don't know really what it is, but I think part of it is that he isn't aggressive enough. Now, that's the funny thing. I think John said in his email, 1 minute you're saying that uh, AG Garland was a good appointment as AG, and now you're saying he's weak, even though we've been saying all along that he's weak. And I get that, but that's not how I make decisions. Like I said, I don't do emotions when it comes to this sort of stuff. Initially, when he was appointed, it was a good choice based on what we knew of Merrick Garland. We knew that he was respected on the Republican and Democratic side, and that seemed like a good choice. But it wasn't until later that I realized that um, he was a little weak in his efforts. Now, the period of time before he hired Jack Smith was 2 years where he did nothing. I was willing to let him have that, getting into the job, getting settled in, trying to get his house in order, and all that stuff. But as time went on, I got to see what some people were complaining about. I come to the same conclusion that all of those people did, but later than you did, because I wasn't looking at it emotionally. It was easy to get mad at them and say, okay, yeah, let's get rid of them. But we can't do that in every situation. But once the facts played out, I get it. I agree with you. Maybe I'm slower to the party than some people, but I want to know the facts and I want to know what's real. I don't want to just make reactionary decisions on things. That's where you make mistakes. And the fact of the matter is, there was no way they were going to get rid of Merrick Garland during the time when everybody wanted him gone. In fact, there's no way they're going to get rid of him now because of all these trials going on. You take the leader of the DOJ out, and that creates all kinds of fucking trouble and a mess. So that's why I say Merrick Garland will probably be out, but not till after the election or even after the trials, because they can't afford to uh, make everything more confusing than it already is. All right. The next email says, "Hi, Mike. First off, I love you and your podcast. I listen daily. I am a surgeon in practice in Arizona. What I'm worried about is not that Dick Stain Donald will get significantly more votes in a general election this time, but that the young people and possibly the minority people will just not be motivated and not go out and vote for Biden based on his age, etc. So I worry about handling that more on a win based on lack of participation on the blue end. No vote is a vote for the orange asshat." Neil. I understand what you're saying, Neil. And I know that's a concern of a lot of folks. And it's hard to say exactly how it's going to play out come November. But we know how it's played out in history. We know that in 2020, Joe Biden got more votes than any presidential candidate in history. And the whole reason was because of the turnout. And the turnout wasn't a mandate on Joe Biden as much as it was fear of Donald Trump getting back into office. So the young people were motivated. They played a big role in 2020. And then we go to 2022, the whole Roe v. Wade thing. Again, we had an unprecedented amount of a turnout in a midterm election. Once again, it's the fear of Donald Trump, the people he endorses, and the worry about this overturning Roe v. Wade. Now, both those elections were very important. You remember in 2020, we said this could be the most important election you ever have. And it was at the time, but you have to understand that at that moment in time, we didn't know nearly as much as we know now about Donald Trump. We had no clue really how dangerous he was. And they just didn't like the guy, and they came out in droves. So, based on those two elections in the past 4 years, why would anybody believe that there would be a weak turnout by the youth of this country? Is it because you think that Israel, the whole policy with Israel, is turning these people off? Personally, I think that is a Republican narrative that they keep trying to push. I'm not saying there aren't people upset about what Joe Biden's doing with Israel, but if you really look at it, Joe Biden's not doing anything wrong there. He's doing what he's required to do as an ally, but he's also trying to quell this thing and help the people in Gaza. To call Joe Genocide Joe is just fucking ridiculous. Joe's not responsible for what Israel does or what Hamas does. He's there to kind of mediate this thing, and I think he's doing a pretty good job of it. But as I've said before, you can tell me the young people aren't going to vote for Joe Biden because of his stance on Israel. But then I have to ask you this. Do you think the young people of this country are more concerned with his stance on Israel or overturning Roe v. Wade? Which do you think is the bigger issue of the young people in the United States of America? That's not a hard one to pick. Again, I'm looking at logic. I'm looking at facts. I'm not talking about emotions. I know millennials. I know some Gen Zs. I guarantee you, most of them aren't really understanding exactly what's going on with Israel and Hamas. So they don't even know what Joe Biden is or isn't doing. They do know about Roe v. Wade, and they are upset about it. Just check 2022's midterm election. That will tell you how mad they are. There's another thing I always bring up to people who say, well, I'm mad at Joe Biden. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. I put it to them this way. So you don't want to vote for Joe Biden because you don't like his stance on Israel. So tell me this, if you're not going to vote for Joe Biden, are you then going to vote for somebody who tried to overturn elections, undermine democracy, overthrow the country, stole classified documents, distributed classified documents to our adversarial countries? All these committed crimes and corruptions of all kinds been uh, been is going to be prosecuted with 91 felony charges. So is that your move? You're mad at Joe about Israel, so you're going to vote for this fuck over here? Please. Young people aren't that stupid. This is something the Republicans are trying to make you believe because they have nothing. They have no substance. They have no policy. They have no fucking wins. And because of this, they're trying to get something to go negatively to Joe Biden. None of it's working. Don't get caught up in this thing. Well, all the young people are going to vote against Joe Biden. That is absolute, categorically bullshit. Now, that's my opinion, but I'm basing it on facts and what I know and what's happened in the past. Don't let the emotions get away from you. Don't listen to Republican rhetoric. It's absolute bullshit. All right, the next one says, "Hey, Mike, enjoyed talking with you the other night and looking forward to the next time. Was at work today, and you never guess who I got a campaign text from. Nikki Haley, who evidently is going to be in San Antonio this Friday, asking me if I'm going. God damn, talk about a wrong number. This, of course, is Jace, our friend in Texas who lives in San Antonio. I was just reading somewhere she either said Biden won't be the nominee for the Dems or should not be. Well, no, she in fact said he should resign. He should resign. And I said, well, that's rich coming from a woman who has yet to win a primary and has no prospects of winning a primary. She's not even a real candidate for the nominee of the Republican Party unless Donald Trump goes to jail or fucking keels over. So take what she says with a grain of salt. I'll be honest with you, when Super Tuesday comes up and she gets her ass wiped all over the floor by this dipshit Donald Trump, who's going to give her money? She'll probably be dropping out too. Anyway, and Jason and I are thinking alike here because he goes on and says, "Who the hell do you think you are?" Meaning Nikki Haley. You are not even the Republican candidate. A lot of nerve, but I see what she's doing, trying to reach the disgruntled independent or ex-Republicans. Well, I voted for Biden and I will in November. While Texas has done away with the straight line voting, I sure as hell ain't voting for any Republican. Don't let Haley fool you, folks, on the fence. She is no better than Trump. She is bad, but just not as vocal. Yeah, Joe is old, but goddamn, he believes in democracy and women's rights to choose. If you vote Republican, you just ain't paying attention or don't give a fuck. Use your head. Your buddy Jace. And I couldn't agree more. Nikki Haley likes to play off like she's the normal one, but she's just a more polished Donald Trump. She's anti abortion. She said she would pardon Donald Trump if he's convicted of crimes. She's not normal. She's not a good option for this country. If there are moderate Democrats or even moderate Republicans think they're doing something by voting for Nikki Haley, you're wrong. And like I say, I don't even know if Nikki Haley will be around because she can't keep losing and keep getting money. All right. Next one says, "Hey, Mike, just want to weigh in on John from New York." That's the emailer I talked about. No problem with how he is concerned. Just want to say I'm not worried about things I can't control. That's something I preach all the time. People live in agony because they're worried about shit they can't control. Sure, you may worry about it, but to agonize over it and you can't control it, it's a waste of emotion. I vote, that's what I can do. I will go down swinging, and no way he's getting into office. The end. My sister worries the same way, and every time I have to tell her how Donald Trump gains votes, like I suggest. I know a lot of people think this election is critical and could end bad. Me not worry. This is an easy gamble that we will win. I feel he thinks the Globetrotters are going to lose to the Generals. I sleep like I'm in a coma. Every day I'm loud and proud and not scared. My life is better because of confidence. I couldn't agree more. John should come on the show. You make it so easy, and people will welcome him with open arms, not like Trump fucks cause or you disagree with their lack of facts. Yeah. Wish I was in Savannah with you. Montana blows this time of year like Minnesota. John, just do it. Let it out. It's so freeing and calming. Darren. Yeah. And Darren, I appreciate the vote of confidence. And as I said, I don't think John is going to come on. And if it's a worry to him about what may happen in his place of work, by all means, don't come on. I don't want to be responsible for somebody losing a job or getting in trouble. So don't come on if you don't feel comfortable with it. Next one says, "Hi, Mike. I wish I was surprised by Dirty Diaper Donnie quoting Yogi Berra in a court filing. Yeah, that was pretty weak. Trump's audacity is almost unmatched. It's an obvious delay tactic. From what I've read on his claim, he is saying that it is more important for voters to hear his message than whether or not he's guilty of multiple felonies, including fraud conspiracy against the rights of citizens. Clearly, he knows it's almost a certainty that he will be convicted. He's scared, and it's showing. If he was as innocent as he claims, you would think that he'd want to expedite the case and prove his innocence. You've been saying for months that all the cases will be overwhelming. We are seeing the beginnings of this today. I was reading that there are court appointments in two different cases Thursday. One is on the Stormy Daniels case in New York, which we will talk about. The other involves Fani Willis possibly testifying about her relationship with the prosecutor she hired. And she did testify, and it was a hell of a testimony. I'm sure Donnie wants a ringside seat to try to intimidate the court into removing her or something because he believes it will save him. How delusional must he be actually to believe any of this is helping him? I think Fani Willis might have made a mistake with this relationship, but it shouldn't affect her case. Once again, it is more confusion and attempted delay. With the House impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, I can't wait till they're made to look foolish in front of the American people again. The Senate should start trial almost immediately. The worst thing that Democrats could do is just dismiss the charges. I can't wait to see the evidence they try to use. I wonder if they do hold a trial, who will the Republicans select as managers to try this case? Any bets on people like Lauren Boebert, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, or Marjorie Taylor Greene? I'm sure it's going to be one of them. These Republicans keep fucking up, and personally, I don't want them to stop. Thanks, Eric. All right, next one comes from Dave. Hey, Boomer, it's your Southeast Minnesota connection, the guy whose daughter you like more than him when we met for breakfast in your area. That's right. I don't say I liked her better than you, but your daughter's cuter than you, and she's pretty smart and well, very smart and kind of a smart ass. And I have an affinity for smart asses, which you kind of fit that bill too. I have a message for the Boomer audience. Somebody talk shit to Old Soul. We ride at dawn, bitches. Peace, Dave. Yeah, yeah. I said that to Old Soul that. Um, if she ever gets any back talk or threats or anything like that, we got a whole crowd of people that listen to her on YouTube and in the podcast that would have her back in a minute, including me and a lot of other folks. Next one comes from Gussie. Hey, Boomer, I too am old enough to be one of Old Soul's parents. When she said that she's considering joining social media, I became a little fearful. The last thing we need is for the pro-life red rectums to track down her location and begin threatening her. She, her daughter, and her guest must be protected. The work that she does is much too valuable. Gussie, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right. We got one more email, then we'll get to some of the news that's going on, and there's a lot of it. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We're continuing on this Friday. And I wanted to bring something up. There's one news story that we're not talking about today. And keep in mind, I'm recording this in the early hours of Friday morning. So anything that happens Friday, I haven't heard yet, obviously. But we were under the understanding that Judge Engeron in the Letitia James lawsuit would have his final decision as to how much Donald Trump will have to pay the state of New York in the lawsuit. We're talking about upwards of $370 million. And that figure or higher is going to be absolutely devastating and crushing to Donald Trump. So we're all waiting with bated breath. But yesterday was the 15th. That's come and gone, and still no announcement. Now, I'm thinking it's possible, given that today's Friday, that maybe late in the day Friday, they'll give an announcement just so people have time to cool off over the weekend. I don't know that for sure, but I suspect we'll have an answer to that, if not today, within a couple of days, because I'm sure Judge Engeron's getting a little pressure. Of course, he had to deal with the whole situation with the perjury by Alan Weisselberg. He had to factor that into all of this, and all that could do is tack on more money to the ultimate decision, which I'm all for. If you need a couple days to throw on another 100 million, take your time, man. Take your time. All right, we have another email. It says, "Hey Boomer, Vicky from Colorado here. I haven't written in a few months, but have been listening to you every night and really enjoy the show and all of your listener guests, especially Ed and Old Soul." I get it. They're all good guests. Ed's a professional. I've known him for years. And Old Soul, well, she's fucking Old Soul. By the way, I believe that Ed will be on the show tomorrow. He and I will be together for tomorrow's show. So be looking forward to that. Anyway, Vicky goes on to say, "I was inspired to write you today after a chat I had with a coworker that reinforced a feeling I've written about in the past. First, I will say that I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the election right now, especially since the Repubs bungled that immigration bill. The Santos seat went to the Dems, and now I can't wait to watch Marge Green perform as an impeachment manager in the Senate. What fun that will be. It's a clown car colliding with a dumpster fire, and I'm making popcorn." I agree with you. Now, back to this feeling I've been having, and I think many of your listeners can relate. There are many times you have asked, what is it that the Republicans have done since 2020 that would change the mind of any Biden voter enough to actually vote for Trump? Nothing. My point exactly. While I believe your logic is sound, I sometimes feel as though I'm living in an upside down, illogical world. Well, I think that's a reasonable assumption. I do have some people in my life who voted for Biden in 2020, but now seem open to voting for Trump or a third party. Their reasons vary. One of them is a 50-ish black man who is highly educated and very socially conservative and religious. I think he's turned off by all the abortion talk. He also believes the economy is bad. I've tried to set him straight on that, but he just seems to be moving further and further to the right, um, no matter how hard I try. This is a man who actually read Bob Woodward's book about Trump, but within the last several months is dropping hints that he really dislikes Biden, and he was laughing about Fani Willis today. He believes she's a joke. There are going to be some people that vote for Donald Trump, regardless of how ill-advised that is. People not sharp enough or not willing enough or too lazy to look into what the truth is. And I think it's funny that he would suggest Fani Willis is a joke. You obviously didn't see her on the stand yesterday. There's no joke about Fani Willis. We'll talk about that. The other example is a male friend of Hispanic heritage who listens to Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore. What more do you have to fucking tell me? He voted Biden in 2020, but now is vehemently anti vax, anti war, and is annoyed by his woke daughters. He calls me a war hawk because I want to support Ukraine. He hates Biden. I think he also hates Trump, but I believe he leans toward voting for Trump now. It's such a joke. I'm a lifelong liberal, not a war hawk, not even close. Well, of course we're not. These are people that just don't get it. They don't understand. Here's what you need to understand, Vicky, is we can't convince all of them. We can't convince the idiots, the people that are stupid or just unwilling to comprehend what's going on. Don't worry about them. Just because one guy or two guys tell you, I might vote for Trump, that doesn't mean ultimate disaster. That just means Donald will get some votes. But what happens if Donald's not the candidate? I've said that before. He's got a lot of pressure on him. He's already starting to lose it as we speak. What if he's not the nominee? Then what are these dumb fucks going to do? Are they going to vote for Nikki Haley? Are they going to vote for some other clown that they put up there? There's so much that's going to happen between now and November, and people talk shit when they're not under the gun. But when it gets down to nut cutting time in November, I bet you a lot of these people change for a couple of reasons. It's really easy to talk tough now, but once all we find out comes to the surface, it's going to be harder for them to make that decision. I'm not saying there aren't plenty of people that are going to vote for Donald Trump or whoever the Republicans put up, but two things I know for sure. Donald Trump doesn't have enough voters, does not have enough voters to win the election. And if he's not the nominee, there's an excellent chance that Trump-fucks won't vote. And in that case, the Republicans don't have enough votes to win the presidency or much of the down ballot either. So either way it goes, I think we'll be fine. There are other examples of people in my life who, for one reason or another, have lost faith in science and government and hint to me that they're open to voting Trump despite having voted for Biden in 2020. These people who once celebrated the vaccine and now won't even get their boosters because they don't see the point, they all got COVID after getting vaxxed, so they believe that means the vax doesn't work. I even have a friend who believes the vaccine gave her cousin cancer and claims that some doctor declared this to be true. Of course you do. You just can't make this shit up, Boomer. Sometimes I feel as though I'm a character in a post World War II anti fascist play, Rhinoceros by Ionesco, where all the characters eventually turned into rhinoceroses around the main character who believes he's going mad. Gene Wilder plays the main character in the movie, and it's on YouTube. I watched about 5 minutes of it, had to turn it off as it hit too close to home. I do hope that these people are few and far between. I really do, but they do exist. And what does concern me is the Electoral College. Trump lost by only 40K-ish votes in the Electoral College last time. And so all it takes is a small percentage of voters to flip in a few swing states for the orange fat Jesus to win. You want to know how the Republicans are doing? Remember George Santos' seat in a very Republican district? What happened? A Democrat won. Seems like the Democrats are always winning these days because people are tired of the Republicans. Oh, sure, there'll be some people that I'll tell you what people do, and it's a head game people play. If they don't get all the things they want, they'll go the other way just to have their little tantrum. Well, if I don't get my way, then I'm going to vote that way, as if somebody's going to change everything because they happen to want to pout. Talk is cheap. And I'm just not convinced there's enough people that are going to vote for Donald Trump to make it even close. Honestly, if Donald Trump is the nominee, and I firmly believe he will not be the nominee, he won't be able to continue on after he goes through the things he goes through. Keep in mind this: March 25th, he's going on trial for the Manhattan District. He's got 34 felony charges against him. If he gets one conviction out of those 34, the polls change dramatically, and then everybody goes to the other side. You don't think Donald Trump's going to get convicted between now and November? Well, that Manhattan district may be the first one. And then right after that's done, the Washington, D.C. one will come. And then either Georgia or Florida. From the end of March through November, Donald Trump will do nothing but sit in court because he will be required to sit in court. Anyway, I know you're going to say, Vicky, quit your pearl clutching and get out there and do something. I get that sentiment, and I know you're right. I guess I should join in a letter writing campaign or something, as there isn't a whole lot I can do on the ground living in a solid blue state. Thanks again for all you do, Vicky. P.S. Boebert will lose her new district, and I'm here for it. Yeah, she's not doing well. I think when they had the primary debate, out of 5, she ranked 5 in the polls. Lauren Boebert is going to have to look very hard at going back to being an escort. I'm just fucking saying. All right. Let's talk about some of the news. Central piece of evidence in the impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden may have just evaporated. Well, probably did. And it's funny, we haven't heard too much about Joe's impeachment. We heard about Mayorkas, but not Joe. There is no evidence. There never has been any evidence. And now it's gotten even worse. The Justice Department on Thursday announced that an FBI informant was lying when he said a Ukrainian oligarch told him he'd bribed Biden special counsel David Weiss, the U.S. attorney prosecuting the president's son, Hunter Biden, on gun purchases and tax delinquency crimes, announced the FBI informant Alexander Smirnoff has been charged with making a false statement and creating a false record related to the bribery allegation. Yeah, the Republican star witness is a fucking liar, and he's probably going to jail for it. Republicans brought Smirnoff's claims to light last summer as part of their investigation into alleged corruption in the Biden family. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer threatened the FBI director with contempt of Congress if he refused to hand over a document recording Smirnoff's bribe claim. Senator Chuck Grassley wound up obtaining and publishing the file. Oh, he did something. In the document, an FBI agent said the confidential source had reported that in June of 2020, Mykola Zlochevsky, owner of a Ukrainian gas company, Burisma, which previously employed the president's son, had paid Hunter and Joe Biden $5 million in bribes. The supposed bribe fit with allegations that then President Donald Trump made in 2019 that as vice president in the Obama administration, Joe Biden had been pushed for ouster of a Ukrainian prosecutor in order to protect his son. No, in fact, it had nothing to do with his protecting his son. It had everything to do with this prosecutor being corrupt and prosecuting nobody. And it wasn't just Joe Biden, it was other countries that asked for the same thing. For months, Republicans have claimed that the bribery allegation had come from a credible source. Apparently not. According to the Justice Department, the allegation had been made up. As alleged in the indictment, the events that Smirnoff first reported to the FBI agent in June 2020 were fabrications. I wonder what James Comer and Jim Jordan have to say about this. I bet they're going to get asked. Smirnoff had, in fact, been in contact with Burisma executives, the department said, but transformed his routine and unextraordinary business contacts into bribery allegations against Biden, who was candidate for president that he didn't like. Now, so he made this shit up. This is so typical of Republicans. When FBI agents followed up with Smirnoff last September, he allegedly repeated some of his false claims, changed his story as to other of his claims, and promoted a new false narrative after he said he met with Russian officials. Now, Republicans have continuously cited the supposed bribe as they interviewed witnesses in their impeachment inquiry. On Monday, They spoke to an executive from a Democratic consulting firm that represented Burisma. Democrats, for their part, have been dubious about the bribe claim from the start. Now, after a closed briefing, Jamie Raskin said Justice Department officials told lawmakers they didn't think the allegations merited a full investigation. But Comer said the claim hadn't been disproved and that President Biden was actually under investigation for bribery. James Comer's the same guy when people have asked him, "Where's the evidence?" "Well, we don't have any evidence, but we know there's something there." Yeah, we know that there's something there, something made up by the Republican Party and this fuck Alexander Smirnoff. Now, today, FBI officials confirmed that the unclassified FBI generated record has not been disproven and is currently being used in an ongoing investigation. Comer said last June. The investigation indeed continued, and now Mr. Smirnoff could face up to 25 years in prison if convicted. And that is the Republicans' star witness. So once again, the Republicans are fucking embarrassed. Everything they do comes to light. They get exposed for who they are. They're liars trying to taint Joe Biden, and they're doing a fucking horrible job of it. Now, Donald Trump was in court yesterday, appearing at a New York State courthouse on Thursday. Former President Donald Trump made a bizarre assertion about the criminal hush money case against him. Now, you have to understand, when Judge Juan Merchan opened up the hearing, first thing he said is that they are setting the timeline, the start date of the trial regarding the Manhattan District and Stormy Daniels as March 25th. Of course, Donald Trump's team kicked back. "Oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. We didn't get this." Well, this isn't a new date. This is the date that's been set out all along. The only thing that might have changed it was if the Washington, D.C. case took off on March 4th, then they would have pushed it back. But since the Washington, D.C. election interference case has been pushed back a month or two, Judge Engoron said, "Well, we'll sneak right in here and fit in this window, and we'll get the trial started." As much as Donald Trump's lawyers tried to argue it, they said, "Fuck yourself." Judge Merchan said, "We're going ahead with the trial." Now, according to Trump, virtually every legal scholar says they don't understand the charges, which is a bullshit made up lie. Even if he was guilty of something, there is no crime. That's the sentence I love. Even if he is guilty of something, there is no crime. How can you be guilty of a non-crime? Trump told reporters, referring to himself, that statement as well. The comments smacked of entitlement, of being above the law, which prosecutors and political opponents have long accused him of. And, that's the thing, is he doesn't want Joe Biden to enjoy the same immunity that he wants. He just wants it for himself. First, he said, because while I was president, I can't be prosecuted. And now he says he can't be prosecuted because at one time in the past, he was president, which is not true. It's not in the Constitution. In fact, quite the opposite is in the Constitution. Now, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg brought a 34-count indictment against Trump last year over allegedly falsified business records, including the hush money payments made to adult film stars Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. It's not just Stormy. Now, Bragg's legal strategy against Trump has been viewed with some skepticism, in part because in order to secure a felony conviction instead of just a misdemeanor, Bragg will have to prove that Trump falsified his business records in pursuance of some of his crimes, and it's not yet clear what that crime is. However, remember, Alvin Bragg prosecuted the Trump Organization and proved that there were falsified documents and fraud committed. And we know that in that case, in the Trump Organization, Donald Trump's hands are all over everything. I wouldn't sell Alvin Bragg short. He wouldn't bring this and think unless he thought he could win. And with 34 felony charges, well, Donald Trump's not going to run the table. We're going to get some of those convictions out of that. Now, Judge Juan Marchand decided at the hearing on Thursday to allow the scheduled trial date of March 25th to stand, denying requests from Trump's lawyers to delay the proceedings. The charges stem from Trump's effort to squash damaging stories about affairs with Daniels and McDougal before the 2016 election. And in fact, when he walked in today, Donald Trump and his lawyers tried to get this case dismissed. And Judge Juan Marchand said, in not so many words, fuck yourself, the trial goes forward. Now, Marchand's decision will make the hush money case the first of 4 criminal trials against Trump to go ahead. And it will also make sure that there is a conviction well prior to the November election. 2 federal criminal indictments center around Trump's alleged mishandling of classified government information and his attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. So that's the first one that's going to go. I mean, I think it would have been more fun to have the DC one to go first, but because of the dicking around with the Supreme Court and all this stuff, it's going to be delayed. It's not going to be delayed a long time. It may be late May or early June before it starts, but it will be starting before the election. We could have 2 trials that are completed before the election, and that's more than enough to sink Donald Trump. Now let's go down to Georgia. In a surprise move Thursday, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis volunteered to testify at Atlanta hearing concerning her relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, appearing to catch the defense attorneys off guard. It was televised, and if you've seen the video of it, you can see that they were surprised, caught off guard, and you could see that Fani Willis was not fucking playing. Not at all. Willis entered the courtroom as defense attorney Craig Gillen was urging Fulton County Superior Court Judge McAfee to bring Willis before them. Yeah, we need her to go over all of this and to explain exactly what happened. They were expecting she wouldn't walk in. Fani Willis stomped right in there, sat in the witness chair, and went to town. Now, while he was saying this, he had no idea that Willis was walking in the room. We asked the court that they allow Miss Willis to be called and interrogated on these matters. And I would too, Your Honor, Willis responded. What a great entrance. They want to talk to Fani Willis, and you better bring her in there. They were expecting her to say, oh, no, I don't want to talk. That would be half of their case. Instead, Fani Willis said, I'm here, motherfucker. Let's talk. Okay, so the position of the district attorney at this point is she's no longer contesting the subpoena, McAfee noted as Willis walked to the witness stand. I don't even think her own lawyers knew she was doing this, so there was a lot of people freaking out in that room. Now, after a brief recess, an emotional Willis proceeded to lash out at defense attorney Ashley Merchant about her prior lines of questioning. She said, I think you implied that I slept with Wade at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive, she said, referring to the conference where she and Wade first met. And you started dating shortly thereafter, Merchant asked. Willis fired back, a lie. That's one of your lies. It's highly offensive when someone lies and says you slept with somebody the first day you met them, and I take exception, she said. Accused of acting like a hostile witness, Willis said, I very much want to be here, so I'm not a hostile witness, she added. She added that Merchant's interests are contrary to democracy. Willis had led a criminal case accusing former President Donald Trump being involved in the 2020 attempts to overturn the election in Georgia. Now, Trump and 18 co-defendants were indicted last August. 4 of the co-defendants have pled guilty so far. One of them is the defendant and lawyer behind calling Fani Willis out. I would encourage you to watch any of that testimony you can come across. And she's going to be on television today testifying. Like I said, she's not playing. I've said all along, Uh, I wouldn't want to fuck with Fonnie Willis, especially if she's pissed, and she is pissed. And God help them if they don't prove that she did something wrong, because I would not be surprised if there's some justice, obstruction of justice indictments coming out for those fucks. The one guy who's already defended, and for the lawyer, this merchant woman. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. The bottom line is, um, she did have a relationship with this guy. It didn't come before she hired him. Um, she claims that any money spent on flights or trips or something she paid. And they said, "Well, where's the documentation?" She said, "I paid with cash." Now, of course, everybody got a little hinky about that. And she explained that how her father told her, when you're a woman, that you want to keep a certain amount of cash on hand because you don't want to be obliged to a man. And I get that. She, they were wincing at her paying $2,500 for something in cash, or $1,000 for something in cash. And I don't get that. I mean, that's a lot of money. I understand that. But I pay for a lot of things in cash. I prefer cash. There's no fucking around when there is cash. If you have access to cash, it's an amazing thing. And so I don't fault her for doing that. And since there is no evidence on either side, I don't know how they can even make it a thing. When this is all said and done, I'm sure Judge McAfee's going to say, well, this is that, that's the other thing. But I don't see what it has to do with the case, because it has nothing to fucking do with the case. But we'll wait and see what happens. I think Fonnie Willis will be fine, especially after seeing her on the witness stand yesterday. Now, former President Donald Trump was dealt a loss in federal court in Florida, of all places, by Judge Aileen Cannon, of all people, who denied his attorneys to bid to delay pretrial motion deadlines in his government document case. And you're probably saying to yourself, why would she do that? She's been siding with Donald Trump all along. She's trying to slow walk this thing. Yeah, well, she got a motion from Jack Smith, and it probably got her thinking a little bit. He's threatened to go to the 11th Circuit and maybe try to get her recused, and maybe she's trying to shore things up a little bit. I don't think she'll shore it up all the way. I still think she'll be kicked off the case, but she doesn't want to fight on this hill, apparently. This was an easy one for her to do. Now, as they've done in Trump's other criminal trials, attorneys for the former president have sought to delay the proceedings. On Thursday, however, Cannon refused to extend the deadline to pretrial motions and will maintain the February 22nd deadline. Trump faces more than 36 felony charges for his retention of government documents after leaving the White House in January of 2020. Now, Jack Smith, of course, alleges the former president willfully retained classified documents and obstructed the government's efforts to retrieve them, which, of course, is true. I know it's true because the documents were in his fucking house. We know he refused to return them because the FBI had to go there and drag them the fuck out. So those are the facts. Now, Donald Trump has pled not guilty on all counts and maintains that he declassified the documents he found in his possession, which is not true. There's no documentation of it, and there should have been documentation of it. I've heard one of their other defenses was, well, they really weren't that bad at declassified documents, or they were out of date, or whatever. That doesn't make a difference. The fact that he had them in his possession is a violation. His lawyers should know that and probably do, but Donald Trump doesn't, and this is what he's telling them to say. Now, of course, Cannon was appointed by Trump back in 2020. She's been repeatedly rebuked by the 11th Circuit of Appeals over her rulings in the case, most notably in December 2022, when it vacated her order appointing a special master to review the classified material. The court ruled Cannon improperly exercised equitable jurisdiction. Now, here's the thing with her. She's not only complicit when it comes to Donald Trump, not only biased when it comes to Donald Trump, but she's dumb as fuck. She's not a good judge. She doesn't know the rules. If she did, it would be harder for Jack Smith to call her out. She'd know how to play the game, but she doesn't. She's much like Donald Trump when he was president. He thought he had a lot of power, but he didn't know how to play the game of politics in Washington, D.C. And this is why he's in the position he is in now. So I think Aileen Cannon is in trouble. She's going to try to soft shoe it for a little bit to try to save her job. But I think ultimately the mistake she's made and the bias toward Donald Trump is going to be her undoing. I think Jack Smith already had a plan for this. He was putting in place some traps. He's biding his time, but that time is going to be coming soon. And Judge Aileen Cannon will have to take a fucking powder and somebody else will take over. Now, that may delay this court case even further. But as I've said, don't worry about Florida. Florida will come. It has to come. It's one of the most egregious crimes he committed. But with the Manhattan District and also ultimately the Washington, D.C. case, Donald Trump will be left, and of course, the Letitia James lawsuit, whatever we find out about that, as far as how much he owes there, Donald Trump will be left as little more than a shell of his former self. And that's saying something because he doesn't have much substance in the first place. But these three things will take him out well before the election. The other stuff will just be piling on ultimately. I know a lot of people say, don't tell people not to worry. Like John said that, because then they will react or they won't vote or anything like that. And as I said to John, and I'll say again, the bottom line is I'm going to tell you what I think based on facts. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try to scare you like the media does. There's plenty of people trying to do that to you. To me, if I was trying to scare you, that would be an insult to my audience, and I ain't fucking doing it. I'm just not doing it. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.